So, Joel, Pete, thanks for joining me on this podcast. It's been a while since we started talking about it, but I'm happy you were able to make it. Silicon Valley. The first question I typically ask on this podcast is, what is this one thing which surprised you most in the past 6 to 12 months in the EV charging business or world in general? So, Joe, you want to go first?
I think for me, it's evolving so quickly, and there's new technology coming out, new software systems, V to G. So it's been an incredible ride. So I think it's just evolving pretty quick.
Yeah, you are right, for sure. For me, the most recently, we had a customer that was not doing load shifting. And Joe and I both worked with them on trying to get past the fear of load shifting, right? Is the idea that you plug your bus in and you walk away, but it's not actually charging. And it will be okay in the morning. But they saved on the scale of like $19,000, $20,000 across 12 buses by just doing the load shifting. And once they were comfortable with it, it was great. So that to me was probably the biggest thing, because our industry, as they've adopted it, didn't always go for that. Everyone knows they should, but they didn't. So that one I think was the biggest for me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Joe, for someone outside of our industry, in simple words, how would you describe what AZ Bus does and what AZ Bus is?
Yeah, a couple years ago, I think we were just a bus dealer, and now we're a solutions-based dealer. So I think it's, we offer many different vehicles, but not only just the vehicles, the parts, the service, the warranty, the infrastructure process. So from literally A to Z, we do everything. So.
And Pete, what kind of buses you guys offer? I know school buses is your big thing, right?
Sure.
But it's not limited to that.
No. We also work with cities and counties, shuttle buses, that kind of thing. So none of the big buses you would see at a city or anything, but all of the smaller ones that are used for transportation of people from hotels, right, to the airport, or assisted living communities, those kind of things, in addition to the school bus. School bus has really been our kind of bread and butter and our focus on our company, but it was really natural for us to move into those other areas to support transportation that way too.
And we don't need to be shy. You guys are the number one school bus dealer in the United States of America. And California is your home market, but
Yep.
you also do business in Hawaii and Texas, right?
Yep.
Pete, and looking into your career, you started like 25 years in the...
A little more.
A little bit more than that.
Yep.
Was it the case that your first job was also with AZ Bus or close to that? You joined
not my first job, but after my time in the Air Force, I ended up picking up a job answering a newspaper back then.
Okay.
Ad, and picked up a job with AZ Bus and worked in the shop as a mechanic. Went up through there. I was with them for 7 years. Ended up getting into the clean diesel technology section. We did a lot. AZ Bus and Bluebird have always been kind of on the forefront of clean air technology because of their school buses, right? So CNG, I worked with John Deere on putting the CNG on the road with the Bluebird product here in California. And then we started doing clean air stuff for diesels. Ended up getting an opportunity, started my own business, and ran that for 7 years before I sold it in clean diesel technology. So,
and then you've come like the full circle.
So while I was there the first time with AZ, one of the things that really resonated with me was the core values of the company and the way we're run and the strong ethics. So to me, that really resounded, and I ended up coming back answering a call from our CEO and with an opportunity to come back and help with the electric buses, and which also led me to work with Joe on the electric charger side. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, but you've done quite a few things in the bus industry, from like being on the dealer side, on the OEM side. You also worked for a bus OEM.
Yeah.
So how did that your career and led you to where you are today, just like looking at the holistic,
Sure.
like bigger picture, right?
I think if you post-military, if you kind of look at my career, it's really been around clean air, not necessarily electric in particular, but as I said, CNG to begin with, and then clean diesel technology. And I've always really enjoyed the electric vehicles and believed in kind of what they were doing and going towards. So it was a natural, exciting area in clean air for me to move into that. I did work for an OEM for Lion Electric for a few years and was excited to be part of that young entrepreneurial team that was pushing boundaries, and there were lots of conversations about breaking into the diesel market. So it was a lesson for sure. But I'm glad to be here.
What's harder, to sell a bus or to sell like the full package or charging infrastructure?
I'm gonna let Joe answer that.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's go with that one to
Yeah.
Joe. So your career is like almost always like 25 years in the bus industry too, right? So it's been what? West Coach, Recon, Model 1, Bus West, and now AZ.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I got in the industry. I was young. 25 years it just flies by. But I was going to be a firefighter, and then I decided there was a job opportunity to wash buses and can kind of get in the market, and that's how I got in the industry and never left, and loved it a lot, and competed against AZ that whole entire time. So if you can't beat them, join them, right?
A lot of people would say in our industry, you're still a firefighter.
Yeah, that's true.
Because there's always an emergency going on. Yeah,
that's true.
Something
That's true.
happening.
So then the same question to you. First of all, is it easy at all to sell a bus? I think it's not just a transactional sale. Like we just discussed when you compare the numbers, and actually the numbers look really good for AZ bus. But if you compare with the passenger car market, it's just like maybe a drop in the ocean. They sell as many on Monday or Tuesday, as you said. But, selling a bus is a project itself, but selling infrastructure around it is another beast, I would say.
I think they're both unique. Selling buses, you're gaining trust, that you're not just selling a vehicle and walking away. And I think that's the difference of the industry is the buses are, they're in service for 10, 15, 20 years. They got to replace those buses, where a car dealership, replacing, they can go buy it in another location. So, earning that trust. So, they're both unique. I think infrastructure is harder because there's a lot more stakeholders involved. From facilities to software manufacturers to construction engineers to utility coordination, grant coordination.
Permitting.
So I think permitting, I think it's a little bit difficult to sell the infrastructure.
Yeah, I can imagine that. What's the typical timeline for a project to go from A to Z, let's say?
Oh, well done.
I think there's so many factors, right? I think if there's a grant tied to it, we're waiting for the grant funds, the application to submit the application, then we're waiting for that grant to award, then everything moves forward. I would say the timeline if grants are involved is at least could be 18 to 24 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for people who are in the bus industry, it makes a lot of sense to stay there for like longer term, right? Yeah. So because, for your projects to materialize, it takes years.
Yeah.
It takes years, especially if it's a new bus model with a new feature or with a new whatever it is, like connectivity. You want to see it on the roads. Stick to the company you work for.
Yeah. Well, and I think in our customer base, they all tend to stay in the school bus industry forever, right? I mean, that's kind of the career that those people have. They may change districts, but they really do stay there, and it's important to us that our customers stay with us for a long time. So that's one of our important pieces of our company.
That kind of resonates in me. So I actually never said it to anyone around me, but my dad was a bus driver.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah. And he spent his entire life in this industry.
No way.
So I kind of resonate. I remember myself being like a kid and having those bus rides with him. Just like that's
kids
like
love buses.
Of course,
that's for sure.
Of course.
And we always like to say, a kid's first interaction is the bus driver.
It's true.
The first thing they see in the morning. The bus driver could affect that child's day.
Sets the tone for learning and how they're going to approach the day.
The impact AZ Bus makes in this is actually pretty significant. I mean, let's talk about numbers. How many school buses did you sell in total, and how is this curve looking right now?
We're up to 1,600.
Yeah, I was going to say,
electric school buses.
Okay.
That we've deployed. And those, and I mean, for context, that's really the heavy duty industry, right?
Yeah.
Our earlier conversation was, if you try to relate that to Tesla or Nissan or somebody there, it's nowhere near. But in the heavy duty industry, it's a very different creature. So
correct.
It's been really exciting and a lot of lessons. And I think that's an important piece of the value we bring to customers, right? Is all that experience of what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the timeline of projects, right? Our industry has always been, we'll run out and grab a bus and then figure out what to do, when really the lesson is get your infrastructure in, then get your bus. So
I believe there were quite a few mistakes in the very early days of school district electrification when,
Sure.
okay, we'll buy buses and then, electricity will come somehow, but it didn't really happen.
No, I think that's why the department was created on the infrastructure side for us is, we would deliver buses, and whether it's utility delays or smaller chargers that are not fast enough to charge the vehicles were in place. So, we looked at it to say that it's the last 10, 20% of the electrification experience. But if that's broken, the whole thing's broken. So we really wanted to own that portion of it. Because not just for more of just helping our customers. And like I said, it kind of goes back to the solutions based. We're the type of company that we're going to find a problem and try to fix it. And hey, let's help our customers with that. So it's been really successful on that side. So.
And it's been working. I know you're kind of ramping up your operations. And I personally have been in touch with AZ Bus for a few years now, and only in the last couple of years I see really like this kind of hockey stick curve, and deployments are you're essentially printing them. But that's a lot of homework to be done, right?
Yeah.
So
and I think it's important to point out, when you see that happening, all of that is years of work in the making, right?
Right.
I mean, the pipeline for a deployment project can be 1 year to 2 years. So if you're seeing them hit the ground and they're happening, which they are, which we're very excited about, that's because Joe and his team have spent 2 years working with utilities and working with contractors and stuff, making sure that stuff's lined up. And then all of a sudden it's starting to really hit.
We clearly see California has been leading the kind of EV transition category nationwide. And, maybe it's time to talk about how that was made possible, right? So we have a bunch of programs, and we just, kind of rechecked everything. So the programs are still alive. The famous HVIP, ZESB, that's a big one. Energize, the federal program, EPA. What's the total amount of money which is available, a rough estimate, for like school districts to electrify? And I believe the programs also include not just buses themselves, but also the infrastructure like permitting and charging and all of that, right?
Before you answer the dollar figure, I will put in, they've also, as they've matured over the years, it's not just buses and infrastructure. They're doing a really good job helping the districts with the entire transition, because it's not just a couple of pieces of equipment, right? It's training employees, it's having the right tools, and getting the whole ecosystem together to run EV. They're much better than they were in the past. So
I would say one more to add on your list is utility incentives. There's a lot of utility incentives. So when you stack all that together, I think it's, over 500 million to almost $1 billion. There's a lot when you factor in the utility incentives. Just alone have probably 300 or 400 million, and then you factor in all the bus incentives and infrastructure. So it's
and that's current day. I mean, that's with the changes in the kind of grant environment, if you will.
Yeah.
So there's still a strong presence here in the area that we service. So
and I think school districts, they want to see actually that there is kind of continuity in what you're doing. So I'm glad in California those subsidies and grants are not going away, and they can really rely on it. Also, given the electrification goals California has for like transportation is still 2035. I hope it didn't change, right? So we all stick to the plan. What I liked in your answer is the ability to stack different grants, right? So can you, explain a little bit further how does that work, and what is the best tool, and what AZ does in this area to help your customers, your partners to move the needle?
It definitely gets complicated the more grants are involved, because there's timing, there's grants that are just for buses, there's grants for just chargers, then there's grants for, maintenance software. and then stacking those. So you may get a grant. So let's just say a project's $100,000. You may get a grant for $20,000, and then we find another grant for $50,000, and then we find a third grant to cover that the rest of it. So managing all that and making sure they don't conflict, because there are some grants that are stackable and there's some grants that are not stackable. So, for us, having a dedicated grants team is critical for us and the success we do, because that grants team manages that. They do a great job at it too.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine. And, just to give a rough idea, to what extent the cost of the entire project can be covered by grants? I mean, best case, worst case, just a rough range.
I would say the average, I think right now, there's a lot of incentives out there, especially with utilities that you can stack with their programs. It's at least 80 to 85%
Not bad,
on the
huh?
average. Yeah, it's great.
And that's the whole project, from bus to charger to support network. And
utility upgrades and all that.
Yeah, I think you kind of understated it, but your team helps our customers on the entire trip, right? I mean, when the customer says, I think we really need to go EV, your team's helping them find the funding and walking them through the process and basically consultant through the whole thing.
Yeah, and we don't see us as sales, even though our sales is in our name. It's, like I said, it's solutions-based. We're a consulting approach. We're being helpful to the district in a time where they need expertise or they just need guidance on grants, or they're, a lot of our customers their number one job is to take kids home to school. So, getting that time back to them and still hiring the experts, it's really enjoyable. Yeah.
And how is California different in terms of funding and grants compared to other states? Let's say Texas. Is stacking available in Texas, or what's the best strategy if you want to electrify your school bus fleet?
Yeah, I would say move to California, move to New York. I think New York is another state. And, there's just a lot of incentives in those states to, like you said, there's a mandate to electrify in the school bus industry by 2035. Same with New York. Texas, I believe there are grants available through the federal, but I don't think there's that much state funding.
Yeah.
So.
Have you seen gas prices here in Silicon Valley? I live very close to Sand Hill Road, and I think we have just outrageous, price tags like $8 plus.
I was going to say, for everybody here, that's $7 to $8 a gallon, right?
Right. Yeah. And the reason I'm asking that, diesel buses, they consume quite a bit of, gasoline, like that diesel. And do you already feel that tailwind a little bit with gas prices going up and people hey, we need to find ways to actually be more cost efficient and transition to electric?
It is. So I guess I would answer it this way. When you look at the way that a cost center like a school district tries to operate buses, they're going to budget for fuel, right? And they're going to budget a year or two in advance. So when an economic situation happens like we have right now in the oil industry, that's pain, right? That's a real impact to their budgets. It's got to come from somewhere. Yes, it's much easier today to talk to people about their transitions. We had a school district that admitted to us that they were saving around $100,000 a year on the electric buses they'd brought on board. There was about 10 or 12 of them, and versus the diesels they had, and they had actually started parking their diesels and trying to run more routes, even though when they brought them on board, it was very much a kind of a forced demand kind of thing, right? They were told they need to go EV. As we know, there's a strategy. They found a grant, so they decided to try some of them. And then here we are today in 2026 with $6, $7 an hour of gallon fuel, and they're very interested in running electric.
I think it's on the maintenance side too, as well. I mean, there's no, there's no engine, so there's no oil changes, there's no belts, hoses. When you factor it all together, the cost of operation is significantly less.
Yeah. But they don't react quickly, right? They don't get to say, this is really painful, go buy 5 buses. So they have to go through the process of having someone help them find grant funding and do that. So while the ball might get rolling today, that just helps feed the market's momentum into 26 and 27.
I like where the discussion is going. Joe, can you walk us through the process of a school district deciding to electrify, right? So, like, what is step one? What they do? Like, where do they go?
Yeah, I think, gosh, the first step's going to be grants, right? What available grants, and typically the grants are set up on a per year. 2010 and under would qualify for a grant. Districts would look, hey, I have 20 buses that are under 2010. These buses would, so they would select a group of buses that would qualify, and then we take that process. We would start the grant application. Of course, the utility conversation, start getting involved with the utility, talking about their fleet transition plans on that side. And when you're dealing with the utility, you're not just dealing with these 20 buses. They want to see a 5 or 10-year buying cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to just put infrastructure in, not just for this one deployment, but if you're going to buy more electric buses over 20 years, or I'm sorry, over 10 years, we want to put enough power there. So I think it starts with the grants, then it's selecting the types of vehicles that qualify for those grants, then getting the utility involved, and then providing the quotes for the buses, providing the site walks, and actually designing the layout, and then submitting it for those grants, and then getting awarded those grants, and then moving on to the next step. So
like
it's
placing
pretty,
purchase orders, delivering
purchase
buses,
orders,
like putting the infrastructure in place. To what extent AZ Bus is involved in the whole thing? So I know you have a really good group of experts who understand the grants and all that stuff, but do you follow through the full process with the school district from day one until like the buses are running?
Yeah, it's the full process. We're in it every step of the way, from the time we walk in to the time we're applying for grants to the time the deployment happens, the ribbon cutting ceremony. But most importantly, it's the post services too. So it's maintaining the fleet. So we're there every step of the way. Training. So once we drop off the buses, it's important to train the drivers, but also the mechanics on the chargers, the buses, the maintenance side of things. So,
and I would put in there too that part of what AZ brings with our 1,600 electric buses, we now have technicians that go on site that can work on electric buses. Well, we also train them on chargers. What separates us from any other supplier out there is when there's a problem, if a customer thinks he has a problem with a charger, we can send a tech out on site that looks through the charger and says, guess what? Charger's fine.
Yeah.
In a normal scenario, he then goes home and they call someone for the vehicle, right? Well, instead, our technicians will then immediately go over to the vehicle, connect to the vehicle, see what's going on. And the downtime cycle is shorter by unbelievable amount of time.
Now I can easily understand why customers would choose to work with you, like a one-stop shop, as opposed to, because there is a lot of finger pointing, and I've been in this industry for a few years now. Oh, it's your bus not charging.
What's
it's
our joke?
Okay.
Yeah, the joke is to eliminate the finger pointing.
Yeah.
Whose fault is it? Is it the bus fault? Is it the charger fault? Is it the software fault?
Yeah.
Whose fault is it?
Yeah.
Right.
And instead it's we're here.
Okay.
Yeah, no, 99% of the time we sell the bus, we're always going to get that phone call. We're always going to get that phone call. We're the first ones to get that call. Your bus is not charged into my charger. So again, it kind of goes back to the department creation of it. It's we understood that and we found a solution.
So yeah, that was a critical pain point. Yeah. What are like other pain points when you electrify the school district? So maybe Pete, from your experience, what else?
Early on, driver training. An electric vehicle, range anxiety is the big gorilla in the room.
What's the range?
Elephant, pardon me.
What's the range?
Oh, on a school bus? Today, we're in the 100 to 150 mile range for the industry.
Yeah.
It used to be 80, right?
Yeah, that's a big improvement, by the way.
And keep in mind, for everyone listening, the average route for a school bus for day routes is 35 miles in the U.S., and that's morning, right? And then 35 miles in the afternoon. You will find districts with a 70-mile route.
Yeah.
You will find districts with a 6-mile route. During the first deployments of electric buses, it was important as a consultant to get with fleets and say, what routes do you have? What's your plan on putting these together? Because you can make it fail, right? And if the drivers don't buy into this, that range that we just talked about, they can kill the range, right? Yeah. Heavy duty buses are very dependent on regenerative braking. If you have a driver that's full gas, full brake, you lose 20% of your range opportunity because you're not getting any regenerative braking. Those kind of things are critical. Understanding the acceleration and trying to create an environment where extending your range is a success. Twin Rivers had a wonderful story about giving Starbucks cards to their drivers who had the biggest range, right?
Oh.
So it created
it's like
this,
a range
this reward.
competition, something like that? Okay.
And then Modesto Unified actually they started posting numbers on whiteboards on what people were getting for range, and it created this wonderful competition. And they were posting ranges when those buses were 100 and 120, 115 mile range buses advertised. They were posting 135 miles with the air conditioning on in Modesto. So they were a great success story. And that kind of thing is what we love to tout and say, there's models that you guys need to recognize and understand that if you can't get buy-in from your team, you're going to have struggles. We had another one where they brought buses in and they hadn't negotiated with the union, and the union refused to work on the buses, the mechanics union.
Really?
Because they didn't have buy-in to begin with.
Yeah.
I think we found out about it because they called one of our technicians, and the technician drove 2.5 hours and got there, and it was a setting in the driver's control area, right?
Yeah.
And they were like, "Really? That's why we drove out here?" And they said, "Yeah, well, the mechanic wouldn't come out and support the driver because it was an electric bus and the union didn't have an agreement." So I think the story there is not to focus on the negative, but the fact that you have to get buy-in from your team at all levels.
Joe, let's go back to the use cycle of the bus, right? So like dispatching, morning, shift in the morning, shift in the afternoon. And then I would love to discuss how that fits the thing in the industry, which is V2G. Like it's been all out there like for discussions for many years, but I see that's becoming real thing finally. But let's just, kind of summarize it, why it can actually work and why it actually started working.
Yeah, I think so. V2G, it's still new in the school bus industry. There is a lot of case studies. There's a couple districts that are running it, and private operators that are utilizing the V2G system. It's still complicated, and I think I would say you would have to partner up with the right experts. The utility side is still building out the V2G programs. And, the utilities will want to pull that energy at a certain time. The school district may not want that energy pulled at that certain time. So there's a lot of complications in those areas. And I think, for us, the transition to electric on the school bus side has only been, 7 years, maybe?
Yeah,
maybe good. 7 years. Yeah. So we introduced new technology 7 years ago, where V2G is still new technology. So I think the industry is still learning the overall technology. The case for everyone to go to V2G is still being worked on. And I think some districts are sitting back and waiting and seeing how that V2G is actually working.
I think that's a great point, and to call out also that districts are not trying to be on the cutting edge, right? Their job is different. Is different.
Yeah.
And so while the energy industry sees a lot of kilowatts sitting on a parking lot, that's not what it's there for. Mm-hmm. So we think it's exciting. We've done pilot programs. They've been successful. It's neat to see. But if you get 50 directors of transportation in a room and say, "Okay, everybody, this is really exciting and you're going to get money from the utility, raise your hands," you'd get 3, right? And they'd say, "We'll give you 1 or 2 buses and we'll see how it goes." That's just not their job, right? They have to stay focused on what they're doing. So it's understandable.
Yeah, and we have districts, back to Pete's point on, there's routes that are 35 miles in the morning. We have districts that are going 70 to 80 miles in the morning. They need that opportunity charge midday, mid-morning to get the afternoon route. And that's where we provide the speed of the chargers that can get them to that opportunity charge and then extend the range of that bus. So now that bus becomes, instead of a 100-mile bus, it's a 200-mile-a-day bus based on the charger side. So, we see that value. We see a lot of districts taking that approach versus now V2G does have a great case point in the buses are not running during the summertime. That's where we should be kind of talking about.
And
just like in school, right?
But summertime.
When we were all kids and you get 3 months off, the buses, there's summer school, but there's a good month or two that the buses are not operating. And I think in those scenarios, V2G absolutely works.
That's really well said.
In the day-to-day operation, I think it just depends on the range.
Just going back to basics on V2G, in the early days, one of the problems we all faced in the industry, the technology theoretically was there. So we knew you could charge and discharge the vehicle, but there were not so many vehicles that were supporting bidirectional energy flow. So I was lucky to work on Nissan Leaf, which was probably the first one, but BYD was quite, ahead of the curve in actually implementing that on the bus side. Can you walk us through what it took, where we stand today?
I'll touch on the bus side, and I'll pass to you for the charger side. On the bus side, I think that one of the things that California did is they recognized that they're driving demand with grants, right? So they wrote into the most modern grants. By the way, if you'd like money for a vehicle, it has to be V2G compatible. So today, 2026, any bus you see a school bus you see getting purchased here in California, 99% of them have grants attached to them, which means they're off that list that have it. So I would be willing to say with some confidence that almost everything being delivered to a school district right now is ready, right? The bus side has everything it needs to be bidirectional.
Now, what about charging?
And I'm gonna preface this before I pass it to him is you mentioned 2 parts to V2G, buses and chargers. There are 4 parts, right? Okay. So we'll get back to that, but I'll go to charger for you.
Yeah, so we work with many different manufacturers, and working with those manufacturers on the V2G side, it's been pretty interesting on that side. So we have Autel, we have TELUS that we work with on those projects. Heliox has a V2G product that's great too as well. So it's finding the case for which product, right? So there could be, hey, we only want 20 kW throughput, we want 60 kW. So it just depends on the scenario. But on the charger side.
So,
Michael from Epic, can you tell us what the other portion of the?
No, you're interviewing me.
That's right. That's my turn.
Oh, well, obviously the software piece. I think that's an important component
critical.
For sure. Yeah. Honestly, for you guys, we kind of double down on the V2G, path. I know it will probably represent less than, even 3% of our use cases that we cover, but we've spent quite some time with TELUS specifically. So I think they've done a pretty good job on this front, and they do have V2G compatible chargers at a really good price, and they're here in California.
And they probably have the most successful deployment.
That's, you start connecting the dots
What's the fourth one?
What's the fourth one?
The utility.
The utility. Here you
We
go.
have a customer who just has 30 buses being delivered and got 35 chargers installed, all of which were V2G compatible. And their small utility said, "What are you doing? We don't have protocols in place for that. You can't put power back to the grid. We have safety requirements. You can't just have power flow backwards to us unless we know about it and we have the correct protocols in and we have the correct stuff." So there's 4 parts. It's a very complicated thing. You have to have the right partners and a good strategy or plan, I should say, that's put together.
It takes a village
to provide power.
To provide power.
Yeah. But the conversation doesn't have to stop there, right? They can have microgrid setups, and that particular fleet can still utilize those, even though it might not go back to the grid and be the kind of really interesting case study where they're getting paid for it or something like that. But there's still an energy usage opportunity. School districts can look at it as a V2B, right?
Yeah.
Powering a building, getting
Yes.
that off grid during peak hours, even if they're doing things like that, they can have cost saving reductions that maybe aren't income, but they net them the same value. It's exciting. It's good stuff.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff. And
Although it only might be a small percentage, as you percent, that's
Right.
where we start.
Yep. You sold 1,600 buses until like now, and it feels like your pipeline for 26 and 27 is like
Strong.
Strong.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's call it strong.
Let's
Okay.
call it strong.
Let's
yes.
call it strong. I like it.
Yeah.
Probably because of that, or partially driven by that, is your focus on vehicle telematics. So we've spent quite some time on discussing how we're going to approach this and what's the value for all the participants. Pete, I think that's pretty much your baby.
I know. Yeah, you and I have worked on that quite a bit. So, we recognize. We talked a little bit about the way buses are used. That tends to translate to a lot of the chargers, especially the ones that were deployed to begin with in the beginning of this whole cycle. We're all level 2s, right? And level 2s, although there were the chargers that had no interconnection at all, they just provided electricity. And those have really phased out because you can't report to anyone on what you're using, right? Well, the next iteration were what we called smart chargers, but at level 2, although it's recording all the transition of electricity and your usage, it's not really communicating with the vehicle to let you know what's going on in the vehicle. As we've grown, that's a big gap. We have to figure out what's going on in the vehicle during a charge cycle. And we can do that with level 3. Level 3 is wonderful, right? There's communication. The work that's important about the telematics is once you integrate telematics with charge software, now you can make a level 2 act like a level 3. I think one of the engineers from Bluebird, as I was talking to him about it, got really excited because he said, right now, when a problem happens in Detroit and I'm in Florida visiting a customer, we have to dispatch somebody to see what's going on because we can't tell what's happening during that charging cycle. We can tell the charger's on. We can tell the bus is getting something, but we can't tell about the interaction. This telematics allows us to very simply plug a small 12-volt unit into the front of the bus, and the next day, it's got the capability of a level 3. From Florida, we can tell what's going on in Detroit, or we can tell what's going on in Denver or Sacramento.
Yeah.
So I think it's a big game changer with backward compatibility, which is huge, right? Most of the vehicles today, they're going to say, hey, we got a great new technology. You're going to love it. Buy a new vehicle and you'll get it, right?
Yeah.
And this is one of those rare opportunities where we can say for a very low entry capital cost and monthly fee, you can plug it into all the vehicles you bought for the last 10 years.
And that's a big thing in the bus industry. I think for people who are new to this industry and watching this interview, can you share the price range of a new fully electric battery-powered school bus?
Well, there was a hope.
I think there's so here's what's interesting about this. There is 15,000 options on a bus?
It's close.
Yeah, there's 15,000 options in the ordering book. So obviously they're custom made, custom built, different sizes, different scenarios for different routes. It depends on the spec of the bus.
Yeah,
right?
I'll give them this.
Roughly, bare bones to fully
as
spec.
I say this, keep in mind, the school bus industry is a North American only, right?
Mm-hmm.
The yellow school bus was designed and built by North America, Canada, and the U.S. to keep children safe. They are the safest form of transportation, period. But when you look at the numbers, but they're also a boutique industry, right? These manufacturers, we can speak to Bluebird, we're a Bluebird dealer. Their whole thing is to build school buses. They don't build trucks, right? Semis, they don't build anything else. They build school buses. And every single state has a different spec. So you don't get the volume in production and the reductions in cost that you would expect from a vehicle manufacturer. So with that in mind, with that caveat,
Ready?
ready? Drum roll.
Yeah.
They are going to range from about $280,000 to just under $500,000 for a school bus. For context, it used to be that you could buy a ICE engine bus for anywhere from $90,000 to $200,000.
Yeah.
So it's almost 2x. Of course, we've had a recession, we've had tariffs go up. So there's a lot of factors in this. But 15 years ago, we all had this calculation that as we scaled, they would get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And we've had parity. I think I sat on a panel once about 10 years ago and said, we'll have parity with diesels in 4 years at the rate we're going. That never happened.
Yeah.
Right. Tariffs happened. The economy kind of changed for electric buses. We lost quite a few manufacturers.
COVID also put a big strain and
COVID
delay
paused
and
everything.
Paused everything.
And all these companies that were investing in becoming electric vehicles manufacturers or manufacturing lines all had this stutter in demand.
Yeah.
Right. So
it was even like switchgear. Switchgear was delayed for
true.
60 weeks, and now that timeline has dropped. So
yeah,
it's been an interesting ride, but they're 2x probably what you'd expect from a ICE engine in our industry.
Yeah, and then looking at the bigger picture, like for California to go fully electric by 2035, like what needs to happen with the price of the electric bus to this goal to materialize, right? So we talked about gas prices. Maybe that's the easiest one, just like when you see $10+ per gallon, and I don't know, like maybe that's going to be a trigger, but also maybe a little bit of standardization. So I love, all this kind of it's like a yacht, like a sailboat,
well said,
right?
well
so
said,
it's very close to that.
I think our experience, 25 years, it's always been like this. It's always been state dependent. Each state has their own rules and regulations and specifications that they want for their state. And it's always been like that, I think, since the beginning.
It would take a monumental move in the way they operate to change that. So we don't foresee that changing. If they keep the demand coming, they are going to get cheaper. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's one of the important things. And technology is jumping forward and becoming cheaper for the manufacturer too. So that's what we're hopeful.
And with today's school budgets decreasing and ridership dropping or kids not, maybe homeschooling or charter schools, it's important that subsidies are involved to offset some of these costs. So
yeah. We are very close to one of the largest events in the school student transportation industry. Yeah. So let's talk about that. And I would say if anyone is interested to meet Joe and Pete in person and actually, put together a plan how to electrify a school district, so where we can find you.
STN's our largest, most important trade show that we feel is important for us. It's in Reno this year,
right? It's
in
Reno this year at the Pepper Mill.
Yeah, the Pepper Mill, July 12th through the 15th. We definitely have a booth there with AZ Bus Sales. It's one of our largest booths ever. I think we got a 50 by 20 piece or something like that. Yeah.
With both buses and charging infrastructure samples there. So.
Not only that, but we have a mobile charging trailer that is operated by propane. And that's starting to gain some traction just because, we have a lot of projects that are a year and a half delayed because of the utility or switchgear or whatever. But the buses are arriving. So there needs to be that,
an interim solution.
There has to be an interim solution to operate those buses. So.
Which you really want to also because with the gas prices, right, you can, if you've already bought the bus, having it sit on your lot is the worst thing possible, especially when it's the cheapest one to operate. So I was going to say, you brought up propane, a really funny thing. In 38 states, electricity generated from a propane generator is cleaner than the grid.
Wow.
So
I didn't know that.
We were working with a school district outside of California, and they're kind of going through all the different possibilities with talking to their board and the public, right, on how they're going to do it. And they said, well, we're going to have a propane generator out there charging these. And we're able to bring up the national carbon, intensity of all these things and said, look, you have 4 stations on the ground that the utility's providing.
Yeah.
The ones you're going to charge with this thing are cleaner. The electricity is cleaner than what's coming out of the ground for you. So
that's
isn't that funny?
That's incredible. That's like a typical chicken and egg discussion, and it
kind of blows your mind.
Yeah, that's really blows my mind. There is always a question that I probably missed and didn't ask. Is there like a question I should have asked you, like about bus industry, electrification, transportation, Joe?
Gosh, I think Pete, we talked about this answer about the charge sessions.
Yeah.
I think this is critical. And
Do
Pete
it.
has you have a great response.
I
to this.
think our industry as a whole, and maybe mostly for the school bus,
fleet.
for the fleet school buses, is everybody loves to focus on what's the uptime of your charger? What's the uptime of your network? And we really quickly realized as we got in eyeball deep with helping make sure these fleets operated their buses correctly, that doesn't matter. What really matters is a successful charge session. The most important thing. Because if your charger goes down when no one's using it,
at 1 o'clock in the morning,
after the bus is done charging, who cares? The director of transportation doesn't care. What he cares is that the bus is full, right? And when they pull in and they plug into that unit and they press start, it starts and finishes. So really, we need a shift in the industry to stop talking about how great your uptime is on a percentage basis. Because if it's down, if it's only down 3% of the time, but the 3% is when they need it, who cares?
All right.
For them, it's 100% downtime, right? So we really would love the industry to stop the school bus to start saying.
I think it's the fleet industry, right? It's behind the fence. We call it behind the fence.
Is really what is your successful charge rate? And I think I got that from you guys.
Yes.
And
we
really,
track it.
It really shook the way that we do business. We looked at it and we're like, you're right.
We track this metric for every single site across our network. But now when you're talking about it, like, I think it kind of clicked. It kind of clicked.
I mean, that's what matters. What we want to bring to you as a fleet operator is successful charging operations.
Yeah, having 97% successful charge sessions versus 96% or 97% uptime is completely different.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good thing. And now, like, I'm just like, my brain is working quickly and just like, that's a lot of things need to be involved. Like, eliminate all this finger pointing, right? Like bus, charger, software, utility. User errors. And I know, like, even with experienced users, maybe less applicable to behind the fence chargers, they plug in and leave. And like, it's not Tesla, I'm sorry, but, just do something.
Well, if you plug in the vehicle and it doesn't complete its charge or it stops and you have to unplug it and plug it in, that still doesn't count. That's considered uptime, right?
Yeah.
But in our world, I think it should be changed so it's not successful charge session. It didn't finish. It didn't complete. So,
well, our industry is not easy. I think everyone understands that. But I think I'm so happy to hear from you guys that, all the projects that have been working on like hard in the past few years are materializing right now.
Yeah.
So we see deployments, we see progress, we see different use cases. And I really like, digging deeper and, looking into the things that can help speed up things, right? So, if you want to be fully electric again in just 9 years, it's a lot of work that needs to be done. It's a lot of 12, 18, 24 months projects. It takes a village.
Yeah,
there you go.
It takes a village.
Okay.
And I think, that whole mentality of figuring out what the problems are and fixing them and making them work is important, right? Not just slapping a product down and saying, that's the product, have a good day.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that resonates between AZ Bus Sales and Epic. And as we approach the market, that's something that both of us share, is that we're problem solvers. It's all about solutions.
We always talk about we want to have partnerships. We don't want to have vendors. We don't see you as a vendor. We see you as a partner, right? And good partners. Yeah, and customers too. We want to be partners with them.
We want to be partners with them as well.
Yeah.
So,
cheers to that.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thanks for coming, Joe and Pete. Real pleasure to have you
pleasure.
here.
Yeah, it's been great. This is great.
We'll have more of this and, more deployments and more happy students and customers.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.